My name is Vex Ordinal Shakar. I served in the 3rd Consolidated Fleet for 400 years. I have seen many strange things in my long life, but nothing has stayed with me the way that one day on Drenoth 9 has stayed with me. I am writing this down now because I think people should know what really happened. If I do not tell it, no one will believe it, and the ones who were there deserve to be remembered correctly. Drenoth 9 was a small colony world, mostly flat land and salt fields, with a few mountains far to the north. It used to belong to us. Then, the Skarn Wardens came. Nobody knew much about them. The old star maps only had a short warning next to that part of space. It simply said, "Do not land." Nobody explained why. We thought maybe it was an old mistake in the records, or maybe pirates had once caused trouble there. We were wrong. We were very wrong. General Torvash Wren gathered 12,000 soldiers to take the colony back. 4 legions, many ships, many weapons. I was a communications officer on his personal staff, which meant I was always close to him during the mission. I want to be honest and say that General Wren was a good leader. He was careful. He listened to his officers. He did not enjoy sending soldiers into danger. I say this because what happened next was not his fault. No leader could have prepared for what came out of the salt flats that day. We landed at dawn. The sky over Drenoth 9 was a pale orange color, almost peaceful, if you did not know what was waiting for us. Our scouts went ahead first, as they always did. They were supposed to report back within the hour. They never did. That silence should have warned us more than it did. But we moved forward anyway, because that was the mission. An hour later, the ground began to shake. At first we thought it might be a small quake, common on this kind of world. Then something rose out of the salt flats, and every soldier around me went completely still. It was a Skarn Warden, 11 meters tall at the shoulder. Its body was covered in thick plating that our best weapons could barely scratch. It moved much faster than something that large should be able to move. In the space of a few breaths, it reached our front line, and 400 soldiers were gone. I will not describe exactly what happened to them. I will only say that they were experienced fighters, soldiers who had survived real wars before, and none of their skill mattered. The Warden did not slow down. It kept moving forward like a storm that had decided to walk on legs. General Wren gave the order almost immediately. His voice came through every soldier's communicator at once. "Fall back! All units! Full retreat! This is not a battle we can win today. Fall back to the transports. I need you to understand something." I do not blame him for this order. I have thought about that day many times since, and I always reach the same answer. 12,000 soldiers were not enough to stop that creature. 100,000 soldiers would not have been enough either. The Warden was not something you could defeat with courage alone. It was simply too strong, too fast, too well protected. Running was the only reasonable choice. Any officer with real experience would have given the same order. So 11,600 of us began to run. One soldier did not. His name was Corporal Idris Vance. He was human, part of a joint division that worked alongside our own forces, under an old agreement between our peoples. I had spoken with him only a couple of times before that day. Once about a broken supply unit, once about nothing important at all, just 2 soldiers standing guard together in quiet silence. He was not the strongest fighter in his unit. He was not famous. He was simply a soldier doing his job, the kind of person whose name is easy to forget until something makes you remember it forever. I remember it now. While everyone else turned to run, I saw Corporal Vance stop. Then, instead of running, he turned around to face the Warden. I happened to be running in his direction at that moment, and what I saw made me stop as well, even though every part of my training told me to keep moving. He planted his rifle firmly and stood his ground. He did not walk backward while shooting, which is the normal method taught to soldiers during a retreat. He stood completely still, facing 11 meters of danger, alone, while thousands of soldiers rushed past him in every direction, like water flowing around a single rock in a river. I called out to him in his own language, though I did not speak it perfectly. "Vance, come now! The order is retreat!" He did not look at me. His eyes stayed fixed on the Warden, which had actually slowed down for a moment. I found that strange at the time. This creature had not paused even once while attacking 400 soldiers, yet something about a single figure standing still, while everyone else fled, seemed to confuse it, even if only for a few seconds. I heard the order. Vance said calmly. Then why are you not running with the others? He paused before answering. It felt like a long pause, though it was probably only a second or two. I thought perhaps fear had frozen him in place, the way it sometimes happens to soldiers in their first real battle. But then he spoke, and his words have stayed with me every day since. If I run, it just keeps chasing people who can't fight back. Somebody has to make it focus on me instead. Might as well be someone who has already decided he is not afraid to face this today. You will not survive this, I told him. I was not trying to be unkind. I truly believed I was simply stating a fact he had somehow overlooked. Maybe not, he said, but at least I get to choose where I make my stand. That is more than those 400 soldiers got a chance to do. The warden reached him then. I turned to run myself, and I am not ashamed to admit this. I come from a species that has survived 400,000 years by knowing exactly when a fight cannot be won. But something made me look back one more time before I got too far away. And what I saw that day I have described to my commanding officers many times since. Every time, they look at me as if I must be mistaken. Every time, I tell them again, because I know what I saw. Corporal Vance did not run. He did not try to dodge sideways or hide. Instead, he stepped closer, right into the reach of the creature, moving toward a narrow, weak point beneath its jaw that our scouts had noticed hours earlier, in a report nobody had time to read before the attack began. He aimed carefully and used every round he had left, focusing entirely on that one small, unprotected area. I do not know for certain whether he had actually read that report, or whether he simply refused to accept that something so powerful could not be stopped, and kept trying anyway until he found a way. I have asked myself this question many times since that day. Honestly, I am not sure which answer I prefer. Both feel like a kind of bravery I do not fully understand, even now. The warden let out a sound I hope never to hear again in my life. Then, slowly, this massive creature that had seemed unstoppable only moments before began to fall. It collapsed onto the salt flats of Drenoth 9, defeated by one soldier who had simply been ordered, quite reasonably, to retreat like everyone else. When we reached Corporal Vance, he was still alive. He had burns along one side of his body, and 3 broken ribs from where the creature's claw had grazed him while passing. But he was alive. When General Wren arrived and knelt beside him in the salt, he asked Vance why he had done what he did. Vance answered him with words I have carried with me ever since, translated as closely as I can manage into our own language. You made the right call, General. Running was the smart choice for everyone else. But somebody also had to do the necessary thing. Those are not always the same decision. We buried the 400 soldiers we lost that day before the warden had even fallen. We did not bury Corporal Vance, because he survived, and that is perhaps the part of this story that still surprises me the most, even after all this time. It is not simply that one human managed to defeat a creature that had seemed like a force of nature. It is that when I later asked him if he had been afraid in that moment, he looked at me as though the question itself did not quite make sense. Of course I was afraid, he said. But being afraid was never going to stop me from thinking about who else might survive if I stayed and did something about it. After we returned to the fleet, word of what happened on Drenoth 9 spread quickly. Soldiers from other divisions asked to hear the story again and again. Some found it hard to believe that a single soldier could stand against something that had destroyed 400 trained fighters in moments. I understood their doubt, because I had seen it happen with my own eyes, and I still found myself doubting it sometimes. Late at night, when the memory came back to me. General Wren later told me something I have never forgotten. He said that giving the order to retreat was the hardest decision of his long career, not because it was wrong, but because it was right, and he had to live with knowing that his soldiers trusted him enough to obey it, even while running past danger. He said that watching one soldier choose to stay behind did not make him feel like a failure. Instead, it reminded him why soldiers like Vance were worth protecting in the first place. I spent a long time trying to understand what made Corporal Vance different from the rest of us in that single moment. He was not stronger than the other soldiers. He was not better trained. By every measure we usually use to judge a fighter, he was simply ordinary. Yet he made a choice that none of the rest of us were able to make. Not because we lacked courage, but because we had learned, over long careers and long histories, exactly when a fight could not be won. Humans, I have since learned, do not always accept that lesson the same way we do. I do not say this as a criticism. I say this because I have come to respect it deeply. There is something in the way they calculate risk that is different from the way my own people do. We ask, can this be one? They sometimes ask a different question entirely. What happens to everyone else if I do nothing at all? I looked into the old star charts again, after we returned from Drenoth 9, the ones that carried that short warning about Skarn wardens. I found something I had never noticed before, a small note added many years earlier, easy to miss unless you were looking closely. It was written beside almost every record involving human soldiers across many different battles and many different worlds. I had always assumed it was simply a caution, a warning, meant to keep commanders careful. Now I believe it was something closer to quiet respect, almost like a small prayer passed down from officer to officer over the years. It read simply, "They have not yet learned that some fights cannot be won, and it seems they have stopped trying to learn it at all." I think about Corporal Vance often, even now, many years after Drenoth 9. He did not see himself as a hero. When people later tried to praise him for what he did, he always seemed a little uncomfortable with the attention. He said he was just doing what felt necessary in that moment, nothing more and nothing less. I have come to believe that this simple way of thinking, this quiet refusal to accept that some things are simply impossible, might be one of the most powerful things I have ever witnessed in all my years of service. We continued our mission after that day. Drenoth 9 was eventually resettled, and the colony grew slowly back into a peaceful place. Soldiers who serve there now are taught the story of that battle, not as a legend meant to entertain them, but as a lesson about the value of every single choice a soldier makes, even in the middle of chaos and fear. As for me, I still serve in the fleet, though I am older now, and my duties have changed with time. I no longer stand on the front lines the way I once did, but I carry the memory of that day with me everywhere I go. I carry the sound the warden made as it fell. I carry the sight of Corporal Vance standing alone while everyone else ran past him. And most of all, I carry his simple words, spoken so calmly in the middle of danger, about choosing where to make his stand, rather than simply running from what frightened him. I do not know if I will ever fully understand what allowed one ordinary soldier to do something that seemed impossible to the rest of us. Perhaps understanding it completely is not really the point. Perhaps it is enough to remember it, to honor it, and to pass the story on to others, the way it was once passed on to me. That is the story of what happened on Drenoth 9, exactly as I remember it. I have told it many times now, and I will likely tell it many more times before my service finally ends. Some stories are worth repeating, not because they are easy to believe, but because they remind us of something important about courage, and about the quiet, ordinary people who sometimes carry more of it than anyone expects.